Hello and welcome to another episode of the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. This is John Jantz, and my guest today is Shannon Susko. She is celebrated for her strategic prowess, team leadership, and financial acumen. Having successfully co-founded, led, and sold two companies within 6 years, she developed the Metronomics Framework, fostering rapid growth and successful exits. And now she coaches CEOs and is the author of a number of acclaimed books, including Metronomics, One United System to Grow Your Team, Company, and Life. So, Shannon, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, John. Great to be here.
You had a lot of hard words in your bio that I almost tripped
I
over
don't even
several
know where
times.
that bio came from, John. I was like, wow. Well,
Who is that person, man?
someone on my team is working the word magic.
So let's just start with Metronomics. Kind of what was the genesis of it? How did your journey, as a
Yeah.
CEO, kind of form it?
Yeah, well, it started in my first company. Metronomics has been around for 24 years. It's a growth operating system, and it's one that we built out of pure, desperate need to figure out how to unlock, a way to grow a company and have fun doing it, right? And so it was our first business. We were stuck, and we decided with my leadership team that we brought in from all over the world. I said, like, there must be a system. I asked my coach, you got to have a system, right? Repeatable system. How are we going to do this? And you know what? My coach of all, he'd already built, grown, sold many companies. I say many because I don't even know how many. And he's like, yeah, no, no, you're doing the right things. You're learning from the right people. Keep going. And I was like, nah, we got to find a way. So that's where Metronomics came from. It's a growth operating system to save leaders time and get them, having fun in their business, get them outside the business, find the balance.
So I don't know if I would call you a business book junkie, but
Yes, yes,
I
I
hear
am.
you reference a lot of books and a lot of
Yes.
names that are people that I know. Would you say that like all good entrepreneurs, that you like a lot of those people informed kind of where you ultimately ended up?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. When I was asking for the system, like I kept asking, there's got to be a system, give me the book. For 2 years, 24 months, I read 4 books a week because I actually didn't believe there wasn't a system.
Sure.
And so, in doing that, and then, yeah, I haven't stopped reading books. I still read a book a week at this point, not four, but at least a book a week. But you know what? All the great thought leaders out there, Jim Collins, Michael Porter, like, and all the genres and all the different systems in
Hmm.
the business, they all gave us the what, right? And so you'd learn the what and you'd go over and do that what, and you'd play whack-a-mole on the cultural system, or you play whack-a-mole on the human system, or the strategy system, but none of them were connected. And it, like, I was like, okay, like, we got that fixed. Now this broke. Run over here, run over another. So we took all those great things and we actually plugged them into the system. It's like, when you think of, my background's technology. So when you think of a computer operating system that's running Mac or Windows, many things plug into it,
Yeah.
right? But it's like the system that, works day in and day out. That's what Metronomics is. And we love taking, all the different things that companies need, and we plug it in when it's needed.
I'm curious about the term, where you landed on metronomics. I'm envisioning Sister Colette, my first grade piano teacher, and the metronome,
We all
metaphor.
have one.
So how did you come to metronomics as the term?
Yeah, well, funny enough, first book is called The Metronome Effect.
Yeah.
And when I wrote that book, finished the book, finished it all, couldn't think of a name. I checked all these names, went out for a run, and there's a metronome on my Garmin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because the metronome sets the speed at which you're going to run, play the piano. And the CEO is the metronome in a business. They set the speed at which you're going to grow your business. So that's where metronome came into play. I did have a piano teacher as well. I did all those grades. I did have it sitting up on the piano, but it made me think that day, okay, you set the speed and you must hold that speed or rhythm or whatever it is. So that's where that came from. Metronomics came from the word metronome, which
Right.
represents the CEO who gets to set the speed. We want a consistent speed in the organization, not one that goes fast and slow, fast, slow.
Yeah.
So it's a speed. Um, Economics is the other word, and it was really about the balance of your life and your business, your economics, balancing your time with the dollars. And so there's a whole piece that we have in there, but that's what I was fighting is balancing team, business, and life. So that's where the economics piece came from. And there's definitely a method to that madness. And then the third word, and there's a fancy word for how we made up this word. I don't remember it today, but I know it's in the last chapter of Metronomics, the book itself, but it's metrics. And metrics, what we learned are not the things you track, it's the things you forecast and the things you control that flow through your business. And so everybody who works on a team in a business owns a thing. They do a thing every day, and there's so many of those things they do every day, and we call them widgets. So a metric represents a widget. And so that, those three words made up metronomics, which is this big long word. And maybe we shouldn't have made up that word, but we did because it represented, the things that flow through the business represent the team that needs to connect to them. The metronome represents the CEO, and the economics is the outcome you get, which is balancing your business and your life. Because most CEOs, especially startup CEOs, but even when you get to 8, 10 years, people are tired of the same old, and they can't seem to unlock it. And this unlocks it, right? It gets you back your life so you have fun again and gets you the team you want to work with.
So, you mentioned a couple names, Jim Collins, Vern Harnish,
Yeah.
Gino Wickman. I mean, of all
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
you recognize the names of creating similar systems, how would you, if somebody said, how are you different? Or how is
Yeah.
Metronomics different?
It's
Is
great.
there,
It's a great question, John, because like I, I grew up on the late 90s on Rockefeller Habits, which was
yeah,
Vern Harnish, right? And learning pieces of that. And we had pieces of that. And then, Gino's work with EOS came out later,
yeah,
right? But, he grew up at the same time with Rock Habits. And if you take Great Game of Business, Jack Stack, and,
oh, yeah,
all the mini games that happen, they're all very much influenced in all of this. And we put those pieces in place. We created the cash system. We created the execution system. We had the cultural system. We had those pieces, but there was still a gap in the middle. And the gap was the strategy and the strategy system. And the biggest difference is that by having your 10 to 30 year goal and having your annual goal, which, scaling up, EOS is great. They are great execution and cash systems. And they line up, with the long term. Our 3 year highly achievable goal, that's the difference.
hmm,
That's the thing that connects your long term to now. And it's so close you can reach out and touch it. It's 12 quarters, right? But you must lay out the execution, quarter over quarter, 12 quarters straight to get there. And the system itself, the strategy system, like it's not, we know these days, it's not like, oh, we create a strategy, our 5 year strategy. Like it's happening, strategy we have to talk about every day, week, month, quarter, year. And this allows us to give that connection and the alignment to the team. And that word widget and that word metric in regards to a 3 year highly achievable goal connects your team to where you're going. It connects, everybody in the company to the overall team results. And that's the difference. Now, do we love a company? Like I love a company doing EOS, and they usually get to a point where they need to look further, that
mm,
strategic piece. And we just layer right on top of it. If you're doing scaling up, Metronomics will layer right on top of it because it takes everything they've learned about a disciplined execution system with a little bit of strategy and some of the cultural pieces, and just puts it onto a little bit more of a timeline rocket ship of 3 years. right? It really challenges it.
I, I don't know if this is the deliverable or the objective is to create kind of this repeatable playbook, right? That the whole
Yes.
company uses. How do you stop that? How do you keep that alive? Because as I
Yeah.
listen to you talk about it, so many people create systems and playbooks and like
Yeah.
nobody can actually even find the darn thing anymore, a week later. So how do you keep that thing alive?
Yeah. So the way you keep it alive, because you can write it down, you can have it out, and
Right.
everyone goes, "Oh, isn't that wonderful?" And then nobody does it. At the end of the day, Metronomics is about behavioral accountability. And at the end of the day, it's about behavior with your team on the field. And we actually created a field, a virtual field. It's a behavioral accountability platform that is called, we call it Metro, the company, that it's in is Metronome Growth Systems, but it is the metronome in the platform. Everybody logs in to the platform every day.
Mm.
And a lot of people go, every day, every day. They look at what they said they would do. They look at, the cadence at which they said it. All the meetings are run through that platform day, week, month. And it really starts with why, how does the playbook stay alive?
Yeah.
Well, number one, a coach, right, that understands the playbook. So, I'll put my coach hat on for a second. But at the end of the day, it's the CEO with the leadership team commits to the team habits, right? The team habits of the playbook. And that's what keeps it alive. When the CEO and the leadership team don't want to do those habits anymore, the playbook, we evolve the habits, but they don't want to do it anymore. Yeah, the playbook is just a really
Yeah.
nice like system sitting there that no one will
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
And you know as well as I know in any business, a system is only as good as the users of the system, right? You got to use the system to keep it alive.
Well, and that was really going to be my next point. I mean, a lot of what I think stops like great companies is that they get to a certain point where building a leadership team is different than managing a company.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so, what, how do we evolve with this, right? We build the
yeah.
playbook. It's awesome, but now we've got like new problems.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is we have the seven systems that all connect to one another, and they exist in any business, whether you want to
Yeah.
acknowledge them or not. That's one of the biggest things I learned early on in business. But the thing that we found in Metronomics and with the research we've done over the last 14 years is that there's three phases of growth that every company will be in at some point, right?
Mhm.
And some may never get out of the first phase, which is the foundation phase, right? It's the very first phase. There's five things that we've really got to pull the lever on to get, to move from the foundation growth phase to the momentum growth phase. The third growth phase is the compounding growth phase. Most companies, and like, whether it's called that or not, it doesn't matter. Most companies get stuck there because it's a willingness to have a repeatable cash system and, put the effort in to forecast cash first, have a, execution system that works without the leaders,
Right.
right? But in order to have that, the leadership team must be, like it's the CEO plus all the functional leaders that we have in companies. And it has to be, whatever the definition of that team is, 100% A players. And the last thing is it must be cohesive in order to get that far, right? While we're doing all that in the foundation growth phase, we're mapping the strategy. And to keep it all in line, mapping the strategy gives us strategic pictures. Whether we have all those other things working or not, we can still map our strategy. But it's lining all those things up so that, I always say it doesn't make it easy. It creates some ease. It takes some pressure off. We actually get some growth results just from picking off each one of those things, which actually brings the team back to keep doing it. The thing that actually will take the team through to the other side and really grow, like, the system, I always say the playbook meets you where you are,
Mm.
right? And so I go into companies and they have an eight-player leadership team. It's cohesive. They have a cash system and they have a great execution system that's working without them. I go, fantastic. Let's get to work out strategy, right? Because that's what they're looking for. Others come in that phase and they may have a couple of those things, but they might be stuck on that A player leadership team. right? It depends how that team is formed. But we're going to meet the teams there, and that keeps it alive in the phase that they're in. And then as they, you know, pick off the critical path, we know there's a critical path for growth. We will move to the momentum phase, which you got to keep all those things alive in the foundation phase.
Right.
Then we got to validate with confidence the strategy so that we can make better, faster decisions to keep up with the speed of growth of the organization. We need to take the leadership team to that next level of cohesiveness. You know, I call it Team Trust 2.0, but it's where they're at the point now that they have the time to coach their team, work on strategy, and, you know, grow themselves into, you know, Jim Collins would call the level 5 leader. Bill and Bob Adams, Scaling Leadership, would call it integral, you know, leadership. But it's actually, you know, that next version of the leaders. They have time to grow themselves at the rate the company's growing. And of course, the last phase is compounding. We see companies go into the compounding phase, top line, and they can't sustain it, right? Because the thing that, you know, all those things have to be true in the first two phases. The last phase is you got to, you know, basically what we call the coach cascade system. You've got to cascade out the growth and learning of your team members in order to keep up with the growth of the company. And those are the things. That's why, you know, like some of the clients I've had for 11 years. And someone goes, have they not got it yet? You know, but the playbook has evolved as they have evolved. And it's really fascinating. To me, it's really fascinating, but very much reflects my 10-year journey in my first company, where, you know, it's not a straight line across the growth phases. And once you get there, it's not that you necessarily always stay there. The external environment can push you back. Your team coming and going can push you back, right? Your strategy can push you back. So yeah, it's really exciting to actually put this in place, and a team gets so good at it, they forget about it. They forget about the system, and then they're just thinking within their business, but following the cadence.
So I'm tempted not to ask you this question because we are we're close on time.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick.
But I know it's a big one. How big of a hurdle is the CEO and their inability to let go in your work?
Yeah. I love working through the phases of this with a CEO. Because, and you know, what I call a desperate CEO, I was a desperate CEO. My coach could have said, stand on your head, Shannon, and spit out nickels, and that will get you there faster. I probably would have done that. And there's different levels of desperation on how bad you want to win, right? Whatever winning is for that company. And so what I find is CEOs I was on a call earlier this morning, and they'll do whatever, they'll follow that system, right? Because of where they want to go. So I always say it's how bad does that CEO, and I'm going to go plus leadership team, want to win their game. That is how fast a CEO let go of things. And once they start letting go, like, you know, take off the sales hat and give it to someone else, and take off the finance hat and give it to someone else, and they see the time they get back to doing the things that are in their sweet spot, it goes a lot faster. But it's just got to give them a little inkling of what it might be, right? To let it go. But they've got to want to. There's lots that don't. They think everything's great. And if they think it's great, then it's great. And they're going to grow along at 1 to 3% a year, and like, fantastic, as long as they're having fun. Right? Life's too short.
Absolutely. Well, Shannon, I appreciate you taking a few moments to stop by the Duct Tape Marketing Podcast. Is there anywhere you would invite people to connect with you and find out more about your work?
Yeah, you can absolutely just look me up on LinkedIn, Shannon Susko on LinkedIn, easy. I'm, I think, the only one out there with that name. And as well on metronomics.com. Everything's there, lots of free resources, webinars. Yeah, please come and join our community if you're interested.
Awesome. We got a Canadian resources there too, just to put a little fine point on that.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Again, well, hopefully we'll run into you one of these days out there on the road.